Due to inclement weather, Carlos Baruf is unable to join us tonight, but here to bail us out and talk about his race is Christian Ziegler, the state committee man for the Republican Party of Sarasota, and media specialist Susan Nylon of Nylon and Associates. She's also covering the 2016 election for the Associated Press, and I want to thank you both for joining us tonight. Here's the question that I'm wondering about, looking at how Carlos Baruf has gone about this Herculean task of getting his name known throughout the state. Has he tried to do what Donald Trump has done in terms of saying some outrageous things in order to become better known to Republican voters at this point? Christian.
I've known Carlos for about a little over a decade, and what you see with Carlos is what you get. I mean, he's a very plain-spoken, outspoken guy. He doesn't really take political calculations into consideration when he makes statements. So I wouldn't say he's trying to emulate Donald Trump, because this is just who he's been. It's just, this is the year of the outsider. I think it resonates with voters, and I think he's tapped into that, and that's why people have really noticed.
But given that, I mean, to call the president an animal, there used to be a line drawn. You know, there's always been partisan politics, but there are certain things you do not do, and that would be one of them. I mean, so what has changed?
Donald Trump. That's essentially what has changed. I mean, he has changed politics, at least conservative politics right now. He has pushed the envelope so far that nobody knows that there is an envelope anymore. And you're right, there used to be a mode of decorum that you just treat everyone with a certain respect. But that went out not with Donald Trump. Actually, I want to say at the beginning, in 2008, when President Obama was running then, I mean, they forgot all amount of respect at that point in time, and had never gotten it back.
But you did not see Mitt Romney calling the president an
Mitt Romney was classy. I mean, Carlos Baruf is a builder. He comes from a whole different world, and in the world of construction, you know, the way he talks is just what's acceptable.
He's a successful businessman. They're more interested in getting stuff done than making sure stuff sounds good, which is the complete opposite of many politicians. They're out there, they're usually scripted by staff. They're scripted in everything they say, everything they do. And when you have successful business people that run for office, they go off that script. And sometimes it makes people unhappy, but I think it resonates with the majority of Americans that want to hear that message.
Well, it also gets them a lot of media coverage. I mean, the reason why we're talking about him is because of what he said. And that's why I see him in national news right now, is because of what he called the president.
Right, and there have been other things. There have been calling on a partial ban of Muslims from the Middle East, but as Max reported in his story, that not just Muslims, but that only those from Israel should be come to the country. I mean, is he making? Are there certain missteps that we're seeing here?
No, I don't think that's a misstep. I think there's a lot of people that agree with that statement. I think there's a lot of people that look at the Middle East, and not just the Middle East. Really, you look at any country where they're harboring terrorists, or there's terrorist activity going on. And the point is not to just ban them. It's the fact that until we can vet them and we can ensure that them coming in this country is not going to risk our safety, that we should block it. So I think there's a lot of people, both Republicans, Democrats, people in the middle, that agree with that statement.
And I disagree. There may be a lot of people within the Conservative Party that feel that way, but I disagree as when you look at the entire United States. If you think about the Muslim population in the United States alone, that's larger than the group that you're talking about.
You even look at Europe, right? They always gave us a hard time for wanting a border. They have no borders. You've seen what's happened with the migrants there. It's risked their national security, and now they're talking about putting up borders.
Well, let's get back to politics in Florida right now, and specifically, where does the Republican race for U.S. Senate stand right now? There have been stories this week that Senate Republicans are trying to get Marco Rubio to
stay in the race.
To stay in the race and run for a re-election. His very close friend is the lieutenant governor, who is running right now. You have polls showing that Congressman David Jolly from Pinellas County is the front runner. Is that soft? Where are we?
I actually just saw a poll today that Baruf was a couple points ahead of Jolly right now. And I think that for whatever you think of Baruf, he's actually running a real campaign. I think what he did, 67 counties that he touched base in over the past couple of months, he's really taking this seriously. So Jolly, whereas he was happy to run, ride in front, he's almost neck and neck.
Yeah, when you look at the Republican candidates, we have some really great candidates. You have the lieutenant governor who's been involved for years. He's obviously served under Rick Scott. You got Congressman DeSantis, staunch conservative record in Congress. David Jolly, who won a very competitive race. You have Todd Wilcox, who has an amazing background, a great resume, and then you have Carlos Baruf, who's the outsider. So when you look at it, it's still too early to really be looking at the polls, I think, in my mind. We just got over the presidential. Now people are realizing that there's also a U.S. Senate race going on in Florida. And I think as we get closer to the primary, that's when the polls will start to matter more and more and more.
Well, two questions. So far, Baruf has spent about $4 million on television ads that we've all seen, not only here on the Suncoast, but in Tampa, Miami, all over the state. Number one, how long can he keep up that level of spending? And number two, what is he getting on his return? Because he is starting basically from zero. One poll aside showing that maybe he's a couple points up on David Jolly, other polls still show that he's still in the process of introducing himself.
Well, with the exception of Sarasota and Manatee, his name was basically unknown throughout the state. So I'd say he's actually doing a pretty good job right now getting his name out there. Whether it's going to stay, I don't know. And I think whether Rubio steps back into the race or not, that might change as well. But if he can sustain the money that he's spending, a la Rick Scott a few years ago, I think he's actually got a good chance.
Now, there are a number of Republican candidates who say that if Marco Rubio ran for re-election, it may well impact them. David Jolly is saying that if Rubio gets in, he gets out. Baruf and others are saying that they would stay in. Where does it may not be a given that Marco Rubio can even win the Republican nomination. I mean, he did not win the Republican primary for president, we did hear even some Republican mayors say, look, he has not been working the state as you would expect a Republican senator to do over the last 6 years.
He would be difficult to beat. Presidential primary aside, that's a different race, that's a different level, that's a different ball game. When it comes to the U.S. Senate race, especially with some of these candidates that are unknowns, it would be difficult to beat Marco Rubio if he got back in the race. And I think he'd pull a lot of support that he had in the past if he did get in the race. With that said, everything I've seen, everything Marco Rubio said is he is not running, he is not getting in the race, and he's looking forward to going back to private life.
Leaving that door open just a little bit.
Well, he's also leaving the door open that he could run for a different type of office as well. Take a little break, recoup, and then run for something else, governor or whatever. So,
but the Senate Republicans are applying a great deal of pressure that we hear about that because they are concerned that in the presidential year, when Democratic turnout is at its peak, that winning Florida is not a sure thing.
Yeah, but he's already built up big name ID running statewide. That only helps. And he's got a long history. Obviously, with the presidential, his name ID is right up there. It probably can't get any higher in the state.
But should he not jump into this race, it's a wide open race between the Republican and Democratic nominees.
It is. Which is why
Florida's always competitive.
Yeah, and that's why they're applying a lot of pressure because they need that to remain a Republican seat. So they're probably thinking that it's just safer to stick with what they know than to run the risk of not, of a Democrat taking it.
So where does Carlos Baruf go from here? Does he continue to spend at the clip he is spending right now? And is his out there comments really resonating among Republican voters?
I don't know if it's the comments as much as just being an outsider candidate that I think is really resonating. But when you look at the race, who knows how much he's going to be spending? That's obviously a decision that he has to make. Yeah. But we have a long time, and these candidates are now starting to get the spotlight now that the presidential's up. So it's really anyone's race, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
One way or the other, Susan, 67 counties. That's hard work. That's not just spending money.
Correct.
That's working hard.
That's the whole state to be able to say you've gone into it. Now, I don't know how much time he spent and how many people he actually talked to, but he's showing that he's in it for the race.
And Marco Rubio had the same tactic where he went county by county, and I will tell you, he's meeting with small county meetings, and he's going everywhere doing it. So,
and we'll have to leave that here. I want to thank you both for coming in tonight.
Sure.